exactly foolish people do. I never dreamed that I'd meet somebody like you. And I never dreamed that I'd lose somebody like you.
Good evening. This is the Dominance Academy. I'm your professor, Mr. Justin. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Hope you had a good weekend. It's oddly super nice in Brooklyn. Walking dogs in the early morning, birds are going crazy. They're probably wondering what the fuck season it is. It's like, because like in the winter, you don't hear birds chirping like crazy in the morning. But for some reason, but I'm not complaining. I'm not interested in shoveling snow. Yeah, like when I'm old, I'm gonna be one of those people who lives in a tropical, temperate environment, preferably with a small red Speedo, skin that is too tanned, and a gold chain around my neck, and a big round belly. That's what I'm looking forward to. And perhaps a like a golf cart, like a battery-powered golf cart. That's what I want to do. It's just cruise around in one of those. Yep. With my hot younger wife. Yes. So yeah, we got a show set up for you guys about the psychology behind submission. And I really looking forward to when it's possible to get my sub on here to talk about it, because I'm coming at these things only from the driver's seat of my own experience, and so it would be good to really kind of have that feedback from, I guess, the recipient's side of things. Because I think that, granted, I haven't done a lot of search on YouTube. I don't really watch much other people except from a couple of my associates, and that's about it. But I feel like there's probably not a lot of subs who come out on YouTube and like talk about their experience. And so I think that'd be really cool. Because it's all very individual. I mean, I'm sure there are some commonalities, but it's going to be processed differently from person to person. Yeah. So we're going to be getting into the psychology of submission and checking that out. Let me just pull up my windows. Where the heck is it? Okay, there you are. Goodbye. Come on, where's the other one? Come on. What the hell? Ah, there we go. Yes, the psychology of surrender. All right, let me just change up our audio. Very good. So yeah, if you got any questions about anything during or after the lecture, please feel free to put it in the chat. There's no dumb questions. Like, even if you think it's silly, or too ignorant sounding, in order to move forward, you really have to get away from your ego. Like this is really the primary means and method of learning well. And because, and I think like a lot of like as guys, like we kind of, especially when it comes around like things like sexuality, guys have an aversion towards saying I don't know, or I don't know everything about what I'm doing. And I imagine that's why there's so much preparation. Why I'm sure some of the viewers of my videos are those guys, right? Who they just want to prepare, and try to make themselves so well equipped prior to doing anything. And I think that this is not the best way of going about it. I think it's best to kind of have like a, let's see here, to have an attitude of not being afraid to make messy action, to take messy action and make mistakes. Sometimes, make a fool of yourself, that sort of thing. And I think that's important. Because like the holding back, that'll actually cause more problems, right? And I think getting in the mindset of being like overly preparing, it just stalls the inevitable. Like, and if you just keep stalling the inevitable, then nothing really happens. I've screwed up a lot, and there's everybody who's good at something. You ask them like, how much have you screwed up in doing this thing? and they'll tell you a ton, they'll tell you it's a ton. Maybe like the worst person to ask would be like Floyd Mayweather, because the dude has never lost a fight. So it'd probably be the wrong person to ask in that context. But I'd rather like talk to a fighter who's had a bunch of wins and a bunch of losses, so that they know they have like a full understanding of the complete circle, instead of just knowing one side of it. And this is just the best way forward. This is the only way that you can really move through things, and make mistakes. Actually, I had a very brief back and forth with my pet about that. Well, sort of. And we were talking about mistakes in life, and I was describing a certain point in my life, and she basically was saying like, I don't see that as a mistake at all. You lived your life with many memories and shaped growth and things like that, and she said, now your mindset has changed. And I said, well, really, and I said, well, the problem is not the things that you do, but the motivation behind them. And your motivations behind actions can change a lot, right? Like I brought up the notion of like a nice guy and a grounded guy both look exactly the same. They're the exact same person, except one's grounded, one's nice, and they both ask a woman out to dinner. The action isn't the problem, right? And some idiots will go, oh, they're both simping, but really only the nice guy, or the one who's not grounded is, right? Because his motivation is totally different, which changes the behavior completely. And I said, I explained that, and she said, well, my lord, if the motive is what determines the quality of an action, then how can a person recognize their true motive before they repeat a mistake they aren't even aware of? And I said, we can't possibly do that, right? Because we're not omniscient. And I said, that's just the nature of life and how we can determine good choices from mistaken choices. So, hopefully, and that's part of the way to win. the way to win in life and the pathways of life is to be able to learn and examine your choices and understand what your motivations are. Because a lot of times it's not just the choice that matters, or that's the largest factor. It's what's pushing you to do that, what's motivating you to make those choices. And and then it changes the scope and the color of everything involved. Okay. So yeah. Hey, what's up, James? Looking forward to talking to you this week. What's up, Danny? And Ephraim. Is this Ephraim? Ephraim, the name. All right. I can just have like a regular name, like, you know, just like Jason, Bob, you know, Kevin. One second. All right, sorry about that. So, but yeah, it's very good question on her part. But you know, this is just what happens. You know, when on your path, like in order to grow from things, it's really important to examine the motivations behind your choices, not just the choices that you've made. All right. So let's begin and look into the psychology of surrender. All right, so let's settle in, let's lock in. Let's see here, what is this? Okay. All right, so today we're going to be stepping into a topic that a lot of guys try to shortcut or oversimplify or completely misunderstand. And that is the psychology of surrender. And not the surface version, not the just be dominant means or whatever, not the cosplay, the real internal mechanics of what makes a woman soften, open up, trust, and devote herself to a man. And I know that this is something that guys would truly desire. I think this is within, in some form or another, at the base desires of men when they're interacting with a woman, be it from a purely sexual position or from a deeply emotional position to like a loyalty and devotion position. On some level, I think like every guy is wanting that energy from a woman. And so to make this useful, I want you to, take a listen to this, perhaps take notes, and consider it as like one continuous thought, because everything in surrender is connected. It's a system, and as you change one part of you, something in her shifts. As she opens, something in you stabilizes. The whole dynamic is alive. It's responsive, and it kind of has like its own intelligence. So now the first thing that men have to understand is that a woman does not surrender to tactics. They might work in the moment, okay, but they don't cause surrender. And this is why I don't like pickup artistry stuff, tactics to create like emotional roller coasters, NLP and stuff like that. These things do work. I'm not saying that they are bullshit, but they do not generate surrender. They do not cause her to open up. They just cause a particular reaction, which might get the guy sex or something like that. Gosh, dudes are like searching up like how to use NLP to get a woman to fuck you. Stuff So she does not surrender to tactics. She does not surrender to commands. She doesn't surrender to the guy who memorized all the right lines. She surrenders to the state of the man in front of her. Her submission is not a gift. It's not a performance, not an act of service. It's a mirror, a living reflection of your internal world. And just a side note on that, this is why I also push up against what I hear in a lot of BDSM spaces, that like her submission is a gift. It's not a fucking gift, okay? Like a mirror's reflection is not a gift to the thing that it's reflecting, right? It's just a natural occurrence, okay? So that's kind of how you should be thinking about it. And I think that's how, if the submissive does think about it, because they don't really have to, but that's how they could think about it. But they don't have to, because they just will, they'll reflect you regardless of whether they know what's happening or not. So if you show up anxious, chaotic, ungrounded, apologizing for yourself, asking for reassurance, her nervous system feels it immediately. She may like you, she may find you attractive, she may even want you, but she won't drop. She won't soften. She won't give you the version of her that only appears when she feels the gravity of a steady man. On the other hand, when you show up centered, not pretending to be confident, not posturing, simply settled in your own body, something in her reorganizes. Her breath loosens, her tone drops, her eyes change. A woman senses a man's inner structure faster than she senses his cologne. And the moment she feels that structure, the psychology of surrender truly begins. So to really understand this, you have to grasp the 4 internal gates that every woman moves through, which is fear, desire, shame, and obedience. They're not sequential like that. They don't open in such a neat order. They're more like an emotional threshold that her body consults when she's deciding whether she can fall into you or not. And fear is always the first voice in the room, even when it's quiet. Fear of losing herself, fear of opening too far or opening too fast, fear of trusting the wrong man, fear of letting a man lead and discovering he collapses when she needs him to be steady. Fear isn't a sign that she shouldn't surrender. Fear is just a sign that she's standing at the edge of something meaningful. The next gate is desire, okay? And a lot of men underestimate just how strong it is. Women carry a deep, primal desire, but they only let it surface when they feel a man's intention clearly. If you're half present, half committed, half decided, her desire shuts down. And this doesn't mean chasing. Like, she can be, is shut down, but still chase you. Because that's not truly desire. That's not truly opening up. Okay. And that's what, what I think a lot of guys experience. Like, they might experience her chasing him, but that's more psychological than an emotional state. But she'll chase the guy, but she's not going to truly be in a state of desire. Desire opens when she feels direction, not pressure, not force, but direction. The next part, the next gate, is shame. This is the one that most men miss entirely. Women wrestle with shame around wanting to be led, wanting structure, craving direction, even craving obedience. Culture tells them these instincts are wrong. Their friends tell them it's anti-feminist. Their past experiences tell them men will misuse it. Shame is the internal lock that opens when a man receives her truth without flinching, not judging it, not laughing at it, not treating it as something naughty. When a man normalizes her deeper nature, shame then dissolves. And then finally is obedience. Men get uncomfortable with this word because they misunderstand it. Obedience isn't about superiority, it's about trust. the trust that says, I believe you will take me somewhere I cannot take myself. And I've mentioned this before in like older podcasts where there's like a part of like losing control, and we can look at it in terms of, say, arousal, but it's also psychological control and emotional control. But all three of them, they're virtually the same. A woman cannot lead herself to losing control. And so even like during, say, like masturbation, the orgasms could be quite powerful, but she's still doing something, right? She has to bring herself to that point. And so it's not going to be the same as when she loses control, when she releases everything and her body is guided by some other force. So that's what I mean, is that like a woman cannot bring herself to the freedom of herself. And that's why it's about trust, right? And so the trust says, I believe you will take me somewhere I cannot take myself. Obedience is a woman's deepest form of devotion, and it doesn't come from dominance, but from consistency. When a man's leadership is steady, coherent, rooted, obedience becomes simply natural. When leadership is unstable, obedience becomes impossible. And it's unstable when, the guy is inconsistent, when his emotions flare up, when she experiences his jealousy, if she experiences his fear or his discomfort or his insecurity. And it's not just like a momentary sort of thing where it's purely contextual for that one-off. It's something that's consistent, that she can feel as this like underlying sort of current. That's when the trust doesn't develop. And sometimes you might lash out to try to grasp at trust and get more dominant, right? Like dominate her into submission, dominate her into obedience. And I've mentioned this before, that's not true surrender. What that does is just makes the woman docile. And surely you can get docile obedience, but that's obedience that is motivated by fear. And we don't want that. She already walks around with enough fear. We want to be in such a way that her reflection is something of freedom, that she can release these things and then, see you as a conduit for this letting go of fear. And that is very powerful. So all of this, the mirroring, the gates, the internal thresholds, it comes alive through rituals. Well, I mean, that's one of the ways that it comes alive. Rituals are one of the most powerful tools in this entire psychological landscape, because rituals tell her nervous system there's order here, there's rhythm, there's something to lean on. Most men think rituals are boring. Women think rituals are sacred, or at least they feel that they are sacred. Rituals create orientation. When she knows how your mornings begin, when she knows how you close a day, when she knows how she's expected to show up, when she knows the small repeated patterns that mark your presence, her mind stops scanning for danger and starts scanning for for connection. Rituals turn uncertainty into devotion. They're not about performance. They're about anchoring her body into the relationship. And this is where you start seeing something interesting. As a woman feels safe in your structure, she reveals part of herself she hides from everyone else, sometimes even from herself. Most women carry insecurities they never voice, because most men don't have the emotional depth or steadiness to hear them without reacting. But when she trusts you, like really trusts you, she opens the vault. And you'll hear things like, I worry I'm too much. I worry that I'm not enough. I worry that I'm not worthy. I'm scared you'll get tired of me. I'm scared how much I want you to lead me. I'm scared of losing you if I let go too much. I don't know if you can handle all sides of me. And these aren't dramatic lines. They're psychological thresholds. Like, she really feels this. Like, when she is able to say these things from a real place, she's speaking directly from those emotions, and they're quite real, at least in her head. And they're the places inside her that only see daylight when she feels held by a man who doesn't collapse under her truth. It doesn't feel overwhelmed by these things. And the moment she sees that you can hold these insecurities without trying to fix them, without getting defensive or getting avoidant, without minimizing her devotion deepens. So when we talk about the psychology of surrender, understand this: it's not about getting a woman to obey. It's not about forcing a dynamic. It's about becoming the kind of man her psyche naturally organizes around. A woman doesn't submit because you demand it. She submits because your presence makes it feel inevitable, like just something that makes sense. Because she can finally relax, because she finally feels like someone else is steering the ship, so she can rest in her femininity. Your influence doesn't come from loudness or intensity. It comes from inner stability. Your guidance doesn't come from commands. It comes from clarity. Her surrender doesn't come from pressure. It comes from trust. So when you embody stability, direction, consistency, and emotional containment, a woman's surrender becomes automatic, not because she's performing for you, but because her deepest instincts finally have somewhere to land. And that's the psychology of surrender. It's not a technique. It's not a trick. It's a state of being that reshapes her simply by existing in front of her. If you want this version of a woman, become the man her nervous system can exhale into, and then everything else flows from there. And so there you have my brief lecture on the psychology of surrender. If you have any questions about this, please put it in the chat. It might be something that you've never experienced before, and you're coming here. You're coming here just to kind of get a taste of something that you've only heard of, like some myth. But I'm telling you, this is the sort of stuff that exists practically within every woman, because it's part of core. It's part of the nature of the core. Yes, Efrain. Rituals. Well, they teach many things. One of them, rituals teach her body your behavior, but it's also it puts a physical symbol to a feeling, right? So like a very simple, like a really simple ritual that many couples practice, is just saying like good morning, right? Or she wakes up, picks up her phone and says good morning, whatever title she gives you, or not title, or uses your name or whatever the fuck. And that there is a ritual. Okay. But what rituals are supposed to do, okay, because that could just be habit. What rituals are supposed to do is put a physical shape to a feeling, and almost treat it like a representation of that feeling. And this is why things like kneeling and bowing are so, I don't know, they're so powerful, both in how they feel and how they look. When you see somebody like prostrating on the floor completely, and like some religions will do this, well, they'll not just go down to their knees, they'll lie flat out on the floor, like they're flying like Superman. And they'll have their hands out in front of them on the floor, their face down on the ground, and as like an ultimate way to bow, fully prostrating that way. And it's a really powerful symbol, right? Saying I'm giving of myself to you. Okay. And so rituals, they serve many purposes, right? It's consistency, but it's also kind of trying to like harness a mindset and a particular feeling. And and this is why with my guys, I have them work on their own rituals, right? like a morning ritual, and it gets the mind and the emotions in a particular space. And I think it's a very healthy thing to do, because we have so many things going on, so many inputs, pressures, and things coming at us. Like the moment we wake up, you know, and we do it to ourselves, right? We wake right up and like grab our phone and see what the weather is going to be. We check the headline news, or checking emails, while we're brushing our teeth or something like that. And so we start off with just this tons of inputs, and these can cause some like instability, right? So I have my guys, the second they wake up, is to do like a brief 2-minute meditation, and it's good for the brain because you're not fully awake. I believe the highest state is called like the alpha state, like when your brain is like completely alert and ready to start the day. When you first wake up, it's not completely there. So I say, the second you wake up, just tell your, use Siri, say like, hey Siri, set a timer for 2 minutes. And then you just put your phone down and just sit, close your eyes, and just do breath meditation, which is just basically just putting your awareness on your breathing. That's all. And it sounds easy, but it's actually harder than you think, because your mind will start bouncing off to all these different places. And you have to use that awareness of like, oh, my mind has run off. I need to bring my awareness back to my breath. And sometimes the second you bring it back to the awareness of your breath, boom, it's off to another thought. And once you realize how fucking scattered your brain is, and so easily just flies off tracks, then it can get a little frustrating. Meditation's not very easy at first, even though it just seems easy by description. So this is something I have my guys do, amongst other things, to kind of set the mind in motion. Gratitude is one of the good things. They'll sit and write for, just a couple minutes, like while they're having their breakfast or something, and just write a few things that they're grateful for. And because, especially in our modern life, we take so much for granted. Like even just the fact that we've got like indoor plumbing, like that's something we just take for granted. Where there's some people in the world, and I've known people who they didn't have indoor plumbing when they were growing up, because they lived, like Eastern Europe, and like in like very rural sort of town, and in the middle of January, like you had to go take a piss. Well, you got to put on your boots and your parka and like trudge out to the snow, like just to take a piss, on like a freezing cold wooden seat. And we didn't even think twice about what it's like to not have indoor plumbing, or electricity, refrigerated food, just basic stuff that, we don't even think twice about it. So gratitude is actually like a very good practice to bring into your life. And it just kind of sets your mind in a different place. And so I encourage you to bring this into your lives. But yeah, rituals are very powerful. They can serve as representation for a particular feeling. No, not for the lifestyle, just a feeling. Right, it sets the tone for the text. The next inputs sort of reminds me of the book Atomic Habits. I never read that. So your willpower will fall into the custom triggers you surround yourself with to dose off environment, notifications, social media. For me personally, I've had to limit and make harder to get. Yeah, we have to guard our minds, right? That's the last bastion, and it's under pressure right now, big time. Like, whoever can gain the control and access to people's minds, even more so than what they do now, that's where the money's going to be at. And we're going to see a lot of it in augmented reality. And I remember seeing this video that someone made. It was a fantastically done video, and it was this woman walking around and shopping, right? And it was done in like first person, so it was like the camera was her face, basically, like looking around and this sort of thing. And she was walking through this area of town, and there was like little shops on the sides and stuff, and all these like advertisements just started popping up in front of her face into her field of view, and she had to like, you know, manually go up and like close the pop-ups, you know, like asking for her to buy this and over here and go there. And then she was like in a grocery store, I think, and the augmented reality glitched, like, or she like, it was time for her to replenish the membership or something, and it like went back to the real reality, and she was in this like just shit dystopian like fuck of a place. You know, it was like a grocery store, I think, and there was like barely anything on the shelves. It was just gross and disgusting, falling apart. And I was like, holy fuck. Like, you know, that's, I feel like in some parts of the world, that's what we're looking at, you know. That's why there's a lot of money to be made in erotic hypnosis. What do you mean? Explain that. Yeah, because I create erotic hypnosis tracks. I've got a number of them. And I'm wondering if I should put them out like for sale, because, you know, like there's like an ethical line around hypnosis, and because you really can, I mean, provided they are willing, because hypnosis doesn't work unless the person wants it to. But you know, if they're willing, you can really take their mind into tons of places, like, and you can basically like dismantle someone's entire sense of self. You can put triggers on them that create all sorts of reactions and behaviors. Like there's this guy, I don't follow him, but I see some of his videos, but it's actually a couple on Instagram, and this woman has I can't remember what the condition is called, but if she even hears the sound of someone vomiting, she will start to retch. And so her husband is like constantly trolling her, and he like walks up to her and he's like, "Hey honey," and she turns around and he goes, "Ugh," and then she automatically has like a real like retching, like a dry heave. And you know, she's like, "You fucking asshole." And like, they're very playful. It's like, you know, it's fun to see, because obviously like there is definitely like a dom sub dynamic between them, considering some of the things that I've seen like in their background and in their videos and stuff. And so what he did is, over time, there's this thing, it's called like the something zapper. Maybe it's just called the zapper. It's just this easily found BDSM shock toy, right? It just runs on like 2 AA batteries, but it definitely produces like a pretty strong, quick zap of electricity. Okay. And what he did, he had this one. I've got the same toy. He conditioned her to have the same reaction of like the retching every time he shocks her with this thing. So now so he transferred the initial stimuli, which was the sound of someone about to throw up, and he took that and added another stimuli. So he didn't replace it, he just added another one. So now he's like shocking her, and she goes, "Ugh," like anywhere in the middle of the grocery store, while she's writing an email, like whatever, you know, anything in that she's doing. So he's adding conditions. And so this is like, you know, when I tell you guys that the mind is plastic, it's flexible, it absolutely is. And it becomes even more plastic and more flexible when you're bringing somebody in who is willing to go through the stages of hypnosis. And so you have to be mindful of these things. There's a like an ethical thing going on there, because it can be destructive. I know of some hypnosis programs that basically their aim is to pretty much erase the submissive's mind, like just make them completely mindless, like just like a mindless slave, like a mindless slave sex toy. And I'm sure to some, actually, like some subs, I think would love to be in that state. To them, like that's like the ultimate fantasy. And then to, and also like to some doms where they're thinking, wow, that's like the epitome of slavery, within BDSM. I don't recall. Maybe was it a Black Mirror episode that I'm thinking of? It's possible. I thought it was just like a short that I saw like some years ago on YouTube, but it really made an impression. Yeah, Uncle Guns, yes sir. Thank you for posting my links as usual. What's up, little one? Good to see you here. Man, I was talking earlier about a little bit about the discussion that we were talking about regarding motivation and how that changes the choices that we make. And we can only learn about them when we've realized that they're mistakes, if they tend to be mistakes. If they work out to be mistakes, then that's what allows us to reflect and go, oh, what was my motivation here? Why did this go wrong? Like Pavlov's dog. Absolutely. And so, that said, there's a lot of that goes into leadership. A lot of it. Like if you've ever worked with dogs, like that's absolutely how you train an animal. And we're trained like through like the Pavlov mechanics all the time in so many different areas of life. And so, I kind of came around to it where I was like, well, if you have the right mindset, if you have the right motivation, with the right goals in mind, you can use this for good things. Like you don't necessarily have to make it about, malicious manipulation. It doesn't have to be that way. So when, I hear guys saying like, oh, or like, actually it's usually like older women, they're criticizing and saying, oh, you're just taking advantage of, you're being manipulative. And it's like, well, I am being manipulative, but when did that become negative, right? Like a sculptor is manipulative. He manipulates clay and stone and plastic and steel. So, of course, he's manipulative. And so, in that sense, so am I. And it's because I want to create something beautiful. I want to create something interesting, even when they think they're not very interesting. And so that's my aim. Like that's my motivation behind these things. And so by utilizing stuff like Pavlov's mechanics, and it's very simple stuff, and and you can create tons of change. Like there was, like sexuality is a very easy thing to work out because, and I've mentioned this before, because like in various areas, because the erotic energy is so potent that you can take that and transfer it from one thing to the next. And so, there was this girl that I was messing around with online, and so we had never met in person, and we never had the intention of meeting up in person. It was just purely like online, and she had become a submissive. She had some kind of like idea about it, but she had never really put in any sort of effort, and she never met anyone who could really just guide her through it and kind of allow her to become comfortable with that mental and physical space. And so I asked her, she had like this long blonde hair, and I asked her, do you wear like those hair ties, those black like elastic hair ties that have like little metal section on them? And I knew that, of course she did, but I wanted her to say yes. And she's like, yes, yeah, of course I do. I said, okay, well, and likely you wear it on your wrist. And she's like, yeah, of course. And so she was always wearing it on her wrist as like a backup, right? And I said, okay, this is what's going to happen. Every single time, like granted, this is coming from the place where she's already very interested in me. She's like captivated with my voice and the things that I tell her to do and things like that. And I said, every time that you have a neurotic thought, all right, you're going to snap this on your wrist. Okay. But what's going to happen is that you're not going to feel it on your wrist. You're going to feel it on your pussy. But this was done after talking to her for a little while, and just with the pacing and the tone of my voice and the eroticism that had already kind of stirred up just a little bit. Okay. Then giving this sort of these parameters that anytime an erotic thought comes to mind, you're going to snap your wrist and you're going to feel it on your pussy. And she's like, okay, like she was agreeing to this. And so she was making this agreement, and her subconscious was then hearing it, right? And of course I'm having her say this out loud. And so this became this thing, and I just kept going at it. And of course I was just torturing her by like sending her, erotic gifts, voice notes, pictures, messages, all sorts of things, just to like randomly just get her brain going in these directions. And then she would like send me a picture of her wrist, and she's like, sir, like ... and her wrist is like bright fucking red. And and then I'm like, well, I need to see proof of the other, right? And so she'd like probably go down, feel between her folds, show me a picture of like her wet fingers, and to show that the transfer was happening. And and then I would be like, my generosity would catch up with me. And I'd be like, okay, all right, you can take a break for the rest of the day. I've been like torturing you back practically all day long. And so that's kind of like an example of how you can take again, just taking a non-related stimuli, such as snapping of a hair tie, which is actually painful, which would then cause her to have, an erotic sensation. And so you can do this with all sorts of things. You can do it with sounds. You can do it with certain touches. Like when guys are like learning like orgasm control, orgasm through command, a lot of times they'll use like body parts. So they'll like grab her wrist like every single time she has an orgasm, and then start grabbing her wrist and eventually start adding the command to have an orgasm. And so then they're linking these, like creating that bridge until this becomes like a thing that happens. And then what can develop, there's a lot of other like techniques involved with like coming on command, but it can evolve to the point where he's either only telling her to come, and she does without touching, okay, without like grabbing her wrist, or just grabbing of the wrist causes the orgasm. And so this is like, there's a lot of different methods for this sort of thing, but it absolutely works, and so this is stuff like, if you're with a girl like consistently, this is something you can talk about, and do some research on your own, or you can book a call with me, and I can give you the rundown of how to incorporate this into your bedroom play. But that's the interesting thing about it, is that it can extend beyond the bedroom. Because if it's just your voice, well, then you don't really need to be in the bedroom for it to work. Yep. And the eroticism is just is just one thing. It's just the easiest and most fun. But it basically, like any feeling can be linked to some kind of association. And this is part of the reason why, like, I'm telling you guys to open up your mind to women, in the sense of just being open and not being closed with like judgments, criticisms, perspectives, and beliefs. Because when you kind of like let go of all that stuff, it just allows you to look at them with interest, with curiosity, with a bit of wonder, and enjoyment with the things that you discover through experimentation. as long as you're not afraid of making them upset or making them lose interest in you or any of that stuff, right? Like all that stuff goes out the window. And then you can really get to a point of appreciation for just how interesting their minds are. And and then you can start experimenting, because it's that openness that they've got, that integration that they have between their minds, their bodies, and their emotions. So it's like, because of that interwoven nature of them, that means that through their mind you can affect their body and their emotions. Through their emotions you can affect their body and their mind. Through their body you can affect their emotions and their mind. And in all the combinations. And so this is, I think, like one of the better ways that you can look at engaging with women, from that position of curiosity, openness, and experimentation. Stimuli and triggers that bridge effect responses for an internal association pattern to be created. Yeah. Is this stuff that you mess around with? Yep. But it's all around us all the time. We get all kinds of stuff that are conditioning our responses, things that we take for granted, But again, all the more reason to pay attention to what goes into your mind, like through your eyes and your ears, because those that are messing with this stuff, like on a professional level that's widespread, there's no mistakes. Like they're really thinking about this, really thinking about how to get in your head, control your mind, your perceptions, your behaviors, and your choices. And so be mindful. Do not be a mindless consumer. If I could, I don't really consume much social media. I don't just like sit there and eat for just the sake of eating. Like maybe I'll for a couple minutes, and then it's usually just finding something interesting or cute or fun to send to my sub, but that's about it. It's never really just for blanket consumption. And this is something I should, I encourage you guys to exercise, is to reduce that blanket consumption, because really during your consumption, you're the one who's actually being consumed. And so, like, take heed to that. Yeah, because everybody wants the commodity of your brain. Think for yourself. But once you really start taking control of things in this way by having certain boundaries, this is one of the integral ingredients for creating leadership of your own. Because it's hard to lead when you are influenced so heavily from so many other sources, and this will make your leadership difficult, right? And so you end up copying some fucking red pill shit, or you end up copying what you saw Andrew Tate do or say, you just that sort of stuff. And it's hard to think, right, without having these voices in your head. So if you really want to lead, you want to influence, you have to reduce what has been influencing you. And this eventually starts to allow your feet to slowly come down and touch the ground, and then become grounded, and then you set in the roots so that you can be immovable. And this isn't about being stubborn, right? Becoming immovable is not being stubborn. It just means that you move when you feel like moving, and this is what allows you to lead. Like one of my guys, he had a recent he had a recent situation with his girlfriend, and it was just a bunch of stuff happening. You know, she had like a tough week, or like the latter part of her week was kind of tough. You know, there was a lot of stuff going on at home, and she was just feeling like overall like stressed out. And what was it that he brought to her attention? Cussing, right? So he was like, listen, he's thinking to himself, like, I don't really like this. Like, I don't like that she uses curse words. And so he's like, okay, like curse words, he's just thinking to himself, like, all right, curse words are out. They're not allowed, especially in my presence or in the presence of a child. And the only time that they're allowed was like in the bedroom, like in the heat of passion or something like that. Or there was only one other exception, like maybe emergency or something. I don't remember quite. But so he kind of like lays this out. It's very, very simple. And he writes them down, and he gives them to her. And he could tell immediately that she had shifted. Like there was just something going on. And she just, she reacted, she got tight, and she kind of quieted down, and he could tell something was off. And he's like, you know, tell me what's going on with you. And she didn't want to say anything. And she's like, no, I promise, I won't get upset or anything like that. And she's like, I feel confined. And I said, well, you know, she was like, did I do something wrong? I said, no, absolutely not. Because it had to do with her emotional state in which she was receiving those rules. So he wrote out all the rules around using curse words. It wasn't long, just like a few lines. And because of the state that she was in, she received it in a certain way. And I was like, listen, imagine if she was aroused and then you gave her this, right? Imagine if she was in a very calm state and you gave her this. Imagine she was like feeling very joyous, or, you know, she was feeling very worshipy or something like that, and you gave her this. Like whatever the state, that's how those rules are going to feel, right? And so he thought that because she had this reaction, that that he did something wrong. Okay, but I assured him, like it was just the state in which she received it, not the thing that was causing the problem. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because amidst her terrible day, how she was reacting at home, the things that were going on, like the shutdown, and being like, you know, full of like strong energy, but nothing's coming out, right? It's like being like compressed and held onto. Being like leading is what allowed him to kind of like just be there and not be tossed around. Okay, like, so he didn't follow her emotions. He didn't start thinking that you know, that he was the cause of this or anything like that. Like her mood had really nothing to do with him, because she was already in this mood even before he presented this sort of thing. So, you know, obviously, like, he probably should have chosen a different time, but you know, he did what he did, and that's part of it too. Like leading and influence is that you choose to do something, you do it, you draw the blade, right? The katana's coming out of the scabbard, like it's been done, and you say, all right, this is what's happening, and you just rest on your choices, and whatever may come of it, that's what comes of it. There's no like wishy-washiness, gosh, I don't know, no overthinking, no second guessing. It's just, you do it. You think, you decide, and then you act. And that's what he did. Right? And there was just a little bit of blowback. But this is all, it's all tied in together, right? Because he wasn't led by his fear. He wasn't led by his concern or his second guessing. He was just trusting his gut that this is the right thing for the dynamic, and allowing her to just like have this freedom to use curse words whenever she feels like it. That's not what he wanted to see, right? So he manipulated the situation and said, you know, God damn it. He manipulated the situation, and he said, look, this is the shape that it's taking. This is what's happening here. And of course, he's a good example, right? Because he doesn't curse. So he's basically saying, like, look, this is the shape that this is taking from now on. There's not going to be any curse words used except under these two specific conditions. You know? And he just let her have her, like, whatever emotion she was in, you know? Because that confinement, feeling confined, there's the difference between being owned and confined is just the emotion at the time. So feeling really good, if she's in a great mood, then she'll feel owned, right? If she's not feeling in a good mood, this very same stimuli will feel like she's confined or controlled. Isn't that funny? When she's feeling good, that ownership will feel like freedom. And then she'll feel like a prisoner if she's in a bad mood with the same stimuli. It's interesting that way. So this is why, like, it's important to just observe and pay attention to the women that you're interacting with, and just observe their states and not get like pulled into them and try to fix them or whatever. You know what I mean? I mean, unless she's saying, like, can you help me with this? But, otherwise, there should just be a lot of observation and less talking and acting only when you need to, only when you've like really decided, okay, this is how I'm going to approach this situation or handle this situation. Like another guy, he was, or what was he doing? He was in the car he was in the car with his girl, and he's like kind of introducing her as well to like power dynamics. And she's generally into it. She's really, really into him. She's very devoted already, with like the kind of, yeah, it's just, she's just naturally like set up, right? She's got like a good foundation within herself to become an organized submissive, right? Where she's not just submitting, but she's submitting with purpose. Okay. And so, he's learning, and then he's like kind of like helping her learn. And they were talking about, I can't remember what the fuck they were talking about. What were they saying in the car? And he said, we're talking about videos. Oh, and he said he wanted to make a video of some bedroom play, and he wanted to get a shot coming on her face. And she said, dare I say, have you earned that? And he was like immediately, he was just like, whoa, that's weird. Like, I've never heard her say something like this. And then, I asked him how he handled it, and he thought he handled it messily, and I don't think he did. And he said, that's not how this works. And then he had her write lines in the car while they were on the way to brunch. And, there's like a number of ways that one can handle this. But what's important is that he decided to like take control of the situation, right? And put it back on the track of where he thought it was best. And, I don't think it was a messy circumstance or choice at all. Just very interesting. Like, that made me scratch my head. I was like, like, I've heard a lot about this girl. This is like really out of character. And because it's out of character, I'm like, it's gotta be somewhat of like a feeling him out, right? Because he's making changes. And so she's like, like, I know what he's doing. Like, she knows about me, but not like to the extent of what we do. And she's noticing changes in her man. And so she's like, let me just like poke this a little bit and see if he is who I perceive him to be. And then, so, his actions were, pretty straightforward. It was just like, no, like, what did it say? Oh, that's not how this works. right? He didn't ask a question. It's like, do you think that's how this works? Like, no implied stuff. He just said, that's not how this works. And then he I don't know what lines he had to write, but he had to write them all the way to the brunch place. You know, I would have had her hike her pants down, you know, so she's just like sitting there, you know, nude from the waist down while driving in the car, which like increases tension because she's like basically exposing herself. You know, maybe if they roll up to a stop sign, like somebody might be able to see in and see that she's naked from the waist down. And then I'd say like, well, you're gonna edge yourself the entire way while we're going to the brunch place, you know, repeating, I will not challenge daddy over and over. You know, but so like, and I think like with the way I was thinking about it, it's more playful, which shows I don't take what you just said seriously at all. And I'm gonna just play with you to show my ownership of this situation. And you know, but he handled it fine. But you know, the point is that he was just handling this from a grounded place. He didn't react, right? He responded. He didn't have this knee-jerk emotional thing going on. It cropped up, and then he dealt with it. And I think that he did a good job, right? It wasn't very creative, but it doesn't need to be. You know, I like being creative with this sort of thing because, you know, it's fun. Like, I don't take it all that seriously. Like, I do, but I don't. And so that's just another example about how, you know, he like it's so important to be unmoved by the silly shit that girls do sometimes. You know, because you don't know if it's like a real thing, you know, like the first example that I gave, where his girlfriend was really going through like an emotional thing and she needed his containment. If he started reacting off of her emotions and like desperately trying to fix it so he didn't have to feel the weight of her emotions in the room, that would have fucked everything. Because then on top of her already tumultuous state, there would be an additional, I can't trust him. I can't trust him to hold space while I'm off kilter. And so it would completely throw everything off. And you know, and it's hard. Like once trust and like doubt starts creeping in, like if you catch it quick, then you can put it back on track. But if it leaks out too far, then there's a point of no return, and it's not long. Okay, it doesn't take much of doubt to kind of like have its time before it's gone past the point of no return, and then just everything's fucked. You just drop it. Like you should know it. You know, the first moment that you get of her, you know, picking up on that she doesn't trust you, it's really, really hard. Yeah, it's really hard to bring back trust if it's been broken or it dissolves. So, you know, make sure that is on the forefront. You know, and this is how these dynamics work. You know, they work based on trust. You know, because we're getting into like deeper mental and psychological places. It's absolutely necessary for both people to function well, to be high functioning in a dynamic. There has to be a lot of trust. You know, and you can't like pretend, because eventually that comes out. You can start to feel it, that there's performance going on, and you like cut the shit. Like, you want to be here, fucking be here. And that's the thing, like either you just show up in it or you don't. You know, you can't like half-ass this and expect progress. You know. So, like we were talking about, like the creativity and stuff like that. The one guy, you know, his woman was in a real emotional state, so it required him to be something simple but substantial. The other situation, she was not in some like needful state, like in need of containment. She was basically testing his container to be like, poke, poke, poke. Is this real? Because I see it's taken on a different shape, a different level of density. Is this real, or are you just performing? Are you trying to fool me so that I fall even deeper in love with you? And then, like, can you fucking handle that shit? So I'm just gonna poke a little bit to see, how you, how you respond, how you react, if you react. And he didn't. He didn't have this emotional reaction. He was just like a little confused, as I would be. If my sub said something like that, I'd be like, what the fuck? That's so out of character. Almost like you've got a friend and, say they're from Italy, and you've always known them to just always like speak in English and like in Italian. And then out of the blue, they're speaking Chinese. And you're like, wait, what? You speak Chinese? What the hell? I've known you for fucking 12 years. Never heard you speak Chinese once. And you go into the Chinese restaurant and he's like, chopping it up with everybody who works there. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? It would be like that. It would be that level of confusion for me. And I'm sure it was for him as well. It's just, I think I'd probably start laughing, honestly. Okay. Yes. Kitten, I got your message. I understand. I saw it. I was going to say, why aren't you putting that in the chat? But that's like deeply personal. You can't really share that. And it's way off topic too. But so I bring up those two examples to show that how important it is to be grounded, okay, and to not be triggered by your emotions, because both of those could have gone very, very badly if they had reacted emotionally. Really bad. In both situations, trust would have been reduced. The woman who was in, the true emotional state, it would have been like, fuck, like his container is flexible, it's squishy, it's not like I can't rest in it. Like, he's had this like crazy emotional reaction. He's making it about him, and same with the other one. If he got offended and he got all pissy and shit like that, if he lashed out at her, how dare you say something, just getting just off his square, it would have fucked that situation up as well. She'd been like, damn, he's not the dude. He's not that guy, and it's like once, and perception is, what did they say that? Like perception is reality or something like that. Like once that perception sets in, it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult to break it, to shift it into a new perception, especially when it comes down to trust. Because then if you start kind of trying to re-manipulate and reorient the situation and her perception, that would just come off as being performative or trying to manipulate the trust involved, just trying to get something out of it. And this is this is not good. It basically makes like everything that you do, makes everything you do like suspect. Makes everything you do suspect. So, yeah, how do I do this? I was trying to figure out like I forgot how to make somebody a moderator. But whatever. Anyways. And I'll figure it out later. But anyways, but yeah, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Put them in the chat. Huh. Oh, that's weird. I gotta add it through this YouTube studio. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you don't have any questions because it all makes sense, and it does make sense to me. It's just kind of like, you know, I get how you can sort of see the whole shit that I'm talking about and going, fuck, like, you know, like, where do I start? Like, what do I do about all this stuff? You know, I'm not even like interacting with women. You know, I'm not interacting with women like that. And, you know, on that end, it doesn't get any easier the more you put it off. It doesn't get easier the more you put it off. So just remember that. You know, if you're like, if you're single, you don't want to be single, like, you really just have to make the thing happen. It's not like in porn where the doorbell rings and there's you know, a girl standing there, you know, holding a pizza. And it's like, hey, you want to share this pizza with me? It was accidentally delivered to my place. I didn't order one. Did you order it? No? Oh, come on in. And she drops the box. She bends over. She's not wearing any panties. It's like, oh. Yeah, she's not gonna fall into your life like that, you know. And if she does, you even still have to create, right? Like, whatever that little bit of energy is when she comes in, you know, you have to be able to kind of like pick that up and redirect it, wield it, shape it, you know. And like, this is, you know, along with those two examples that I gave, this is what you're having to do continuously. Like, continuously, all the time, when you're dealing with a woman. Like, especially if it's something consistent, right? If you're only seeing the chick once a week and you're just getting together, having sex, maybe hanging out a little bit, and then that's it, there's really not much that you're going to be having to shape and monitor and all that stuff. But I think that the majority of guys, they really just want, they really want to get into companionship. There's not many guys who are just like, you know what, I'm going to be a perpetual bachelor. I would actually think that they have something wrong in their head, right? Because I think that's written in our DNA to couple up, right? Whether it's one woman or multiple women, but just something that's like long-term and consistent. I think that's just written in our DNA, right? I think that's part of it. Instead of just like briefly bouncing around. Honestly, even if the guy is a dom one, he's good at that shit, I really do think that there's just fear behind all that stuff. I really do. And you know, it's not something as simple as how girls put it, like, oh, he's got a fear of commitment. It's not that simple. There's, you know, after, you know, talking to guys and really looking at their motivations, like really looking at the things that affects choices and mindset and perceptions and beliefs. It's not just a matter of like, oh, he has fear of commitment. I mean, that's a nice way to button it up so that the woman can feel better, feel more in control of the situation. And by control, I mean through understanding, right? Because understanding is a form of control. And so that form of control by understanding it, like, kind of puts it in a little box, neatly wraps it up. And it's like, oh, this is the reason why. And there's multiple layered reasons why someone who would behave like that. And from the outside, like guys might look at him and go, oh man, he's a player, you know? He's always getting lots of women, doing this, doing that. And it's like, you don't know what's going on there. There could be like a ton of dissociation. There could be a ton of fear of intimacy. He could have a large amount of insecurity or self-hate or self-rejection. Like there could be a lot going on there for somebody who avoids connections with other people. And it probably, someone who's like that isn't just with women. It's probably with all people. And that's when you can tell that there's a real problem. Like, say the guy who's a player or something like that, maybe a friend of yours. Like, ask yourself, like, how much do I know of him? How much do I know about his life? And not just like where he grew up, maybe what his mom's name is or something like that. But really knowing them. And there's probably not much you know. Because someone who's avoidant of connection, avoidant of intimacy, they treat this with all people, not just of the opposite sex. But because guys put pussy on a pedestal, they're like, oh, the guy who gets pussy, he also gets put on a pedestal. And they're like, wow. But from what I know of guys, like most guys are just, acting out their layered triggers, conditionings, and traumas in some sort of like socially acceptable way. Because that's what we all have to do, right? Just get through life as like someone who is perceived as like a normal human being, okay? And that just comes off as cool to guys who worship pussy. But like I said before, it's like all he's proving is saying, hey, I really, really desire the validation and approval from women, and I get more of it than you do. Haha. In my world, I'm like, that's not a flex, Like, I get mothered more than you get mothered. Look at me. Mommy loves me more. Like, all right, dude, have at it. So yeah, thanks for the question here. Any rituals outside of eroticism that perpetuate DS dynamics? Yeah. Like I said, like anything can really be a ritual. It's the meaning behind it. And so, I mean, like, think about it. Like, the simple like act of like what Christians do, when they cross themselves with their hands, like they're just waving their hand around. Like if an alien saw someone do this, they'd be like, what are they doing, like wiggling their hand around their face like that for? Right? They wouldn't understand the significance. But by taking that action and placing it into a context, now it has meaning. And when you have like, some sort of symbol with context creating meaning plus emotion, now this turns into something powerful, right? It puts them into a mental and emotional state by doing this sort of thing. Well, I think that's what it was intended for. But so we have all kinds of rituals that are similar to that. Okay. I remember like when I was in school, in grade school, and I don't think they do this anymore. But like I used to say the Pledge of Allegiance like every single morning. It'd be over the loudspeaker. We'd stand up. Everyone would turn and face the flag that's in the classroom. Put your right hand on your heart, and you say the pledge, right? But that's powerful because it's in that context, and it has meaning and understanding behind the actions. Is it a powerful action? No, you're just standing and putting your hand on your chest. Like, it's not that crazy, So it doesn't have to be some elaborate thing. It's just saying, okay, we're taking this action and we're agreeing that it's going to mean this, and we're going to do it, every day or every time we see each other or something along those lines. Okay. So you can make a ritual out of anything that it symbolizes anything you like. And from my experience, it's if the aim is to help deepen her submission, then you're going to want her input. You're going to want her input into the aspect of the ritual. Because if it's something that doesn't really resonate with her and it doesn't provide any kind of feeling, then she's just going to be going through the motions to appease you. Because if you're already in a dynamic, she's just going to want to serve. She's like, all right, I want to do this because you want to do this. And that makes me happy. And it's like, all right, cool. Like that's amazing. But I want this thing to produce an emotion, right? Something that feels sacred to you or something that feels meaningful to you. And, allow them to have their input on what this ritual could possibly entail. And maybe you just go with that and utilize it because she's making it clear that it's effective. Or you take that and you can like add it to something else, or just kind of make it into something more collaborative, right? But that's entirely up to you and how you want to go about these things. Positive disintegration is when we must adapt our self-concept to become someone who can handle and thrive in the situation we're in. The influences of my living and mindset that reflect to the outside. Yeah. So concept. Yeah. Yeah, it's just, like reframing stuff. Reframing with belief, right? When we add emotion to these things, that's when they become powerful. This is why your leadership, your influence, hypnosis, the Pavlov stuff, eroticism, like all of these things, they do that, right? You can bring them towards that positive disintegration. Where you're reframing stuff, right? Like what you said, our self-concept to become someone who can handle and thrive in the situation we're in. And so just you're basically like reframing something. And that's absolutely what your leadership can do. And this is why, like, if you want to bring in any kind of ritual, then that's also you're adding a reframe and saying, okay, we're doing this. And, hopefully it's something that she feels engaged with, that it feels meaningful to her. And say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Because that's really what you want to create pathways such that she can win. That's the whole idea. And, sometimes those pathways can be challenging. Sometimes they can be easy. Sometimes they can feel really good. Sometimes it can feel bad. But it's always in this way of like, I'm going to create pathways for you so that you can win. And that winning, like, at least for me, well, it's going to be different for every dom, every man. But, for me, it's like the, not shedding, but the thinning of the ego, thinning of pride, thinning of self-concepts, which include insecurities, doubt, shame, guilt, rejection, right? Because girls carry around all that stuff just like guys do. And so, I want to thin that stuff out so it has less of a grasp, helping them release their grip, right? The attachment that's had onto these things. Okay. Because like, let's say there's some kind of suffering, some kind of, shame around something, a trauma, a guilt, things like that. These things like kind of have tethers. They have tethers to the ego, and they reinforce some of the identity. Okay, so what happens, like through your influence, right? Through your influence, like through the body to the mind and the heart, right? Or the heart to the mind and the body, the mind to the heart and the body, whatever it is, it starts thinning that ego, thinning that self-perception. And then because that's getting thinner, then the tethers also become thinner. The tethers to that insecurity, the tethers to that fear, the tethers to that false self-perception, the tethers to that trauma, because people identify with these things, right? They say like, oh, your past is what made you. It is in a sense, but it's created a manufactured you based on those things. I mean, not entirely, but they play a role, which then affects, other behaviors, affects other perceptions, affects all sorts of stuff, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about you, how they feel about the world, and all sorts of things. Okay. So if we can do things that allow that ego to become thinner and less grippy, then those tethered things, beliefs, perceptions, pains, traumas, and so on, about the self, those become thinner as well. And so you're by creating pathways that thin out the ego, then she gets relieved of the pains that she's carrying, which then directly affects the dynamic, because that affects how she shows up. So has some sort of experience in the past with parents or something along those lines, where she's always felt like she's not good enough, like really, really bad. Like maybe her parents just like verbally abused this part and like was just always just smashing into her head, you are just not good enough. And she grows up thinking that she's just a good for nothing, piece of shit, right? And if you were with me when we were talking about masochism, about how pain can then transmute these things, right? And it can help this thing get thinner by passing through the experience of pain, right? Instead of like, it's not like reenacting it. That's not really what it is. But to get a better sense of it, I think it was like an episode or two ago where I was talking about the masochism and how it's not what you think, and it transforms these things. But essentially what you're doing, whether it's through, pain or pleasure, whatever it is, or just psychological stuff, emotional stuff, remember, body, mind, heart, whatever, whatever pathways, it thins that. And then you're alleviating her from the strain, from this manufactured identity that she's been carrying around for so long. And you create the pathways for this to happen. So it's like you gotta think. You gotta think and consider. You can't just like sit back and just be like, oh man, I'm here for the blowjobs. Like sure, like that's fun. And like I don't blame you if you're here for the blowjobs, but it's like you're kind of dropping the ball on someone who is willingly giving you of themselves, right? And it's so funny. I saw this meme, and it shows this girl and this guy hugging, and like written on top of him were a bunch of words, and it's basically listing off the things that he like brings to the table, so to speak. Okay. Where it's like he's got a good head on his shoulders, he's spiritually aligned, he's got a decent job, he lives on his own, he's just all these like redeemable qualities about him. And then on hers, she's hugging him and smiling, and it just says me. And the comments, of course, dudes were just like inexperienced, or not experienced enough, ignorant guys with their locked in perceptions, their locked in beliefs, their locked in judgments and criticisms, fueled by whatever sort of emotion they're bringing into it. Just like tons of comments about this girl, right? Just berating her. Of course, it's some bullshit meme that some guy just created, but the thing is that when you really understand this, when she says me, like that's all of her entirety. Like it's the entirety of her being that she's offering. Like what else does she have? You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, we're not like guys, we're not in it for the assets. I mean, it's cool, like if she's got assets, or if she's got a car, or things, or whatever, property. Yeah, that's cool, but that doesn't do much for the relationship itself, right? For the energy coursing between the two people. Great to have, cool stuff, nice, all right, but what does that do for me? What does that do for the dynamic? What does that do for the relationship and the development in the future and the pacing of, you know, how things are going? It doesn't. It doesn't affect those things at all. And so for her to say, I offer me, like that's the greatest, and like she's got like one card. You know what I'm saying? And that's really all she can offer is herself. To then, you know, be, you know, if you're biblical, like your helpmeet, to be the extension of your will. That's really the best that she can offer, and really the only thing she can offer that has true value. So I found it quite humorous that you know, all these guys, I mean, probably young dudes, you know, I mean, it was X of all places, so like, of course, just young guys just going crazy in the comments. Look at this dumb bitch. You know? we have to wait, what do the guys say? What's that stupid red pill thing? Men have to create their value, women are just born with it. I'm like, fuck that. Bro, you gotta work. You gotta work until I see value. You know, I'm not just going to accept your value because you're just here. What lame motherfucker does that? I'll tell you who. The guy who is entranced by beauty, who is enslaved by pussy. He is the one who will do this. And when it doesn't work out for him, he gets upset, right? And that's why they have this sort of thing with the bitterness of like, oh, like men, we have to create our value, boo hoo, and women just have to show up. They're born with value. It's like under what guideline, like what metric are you saying that? They're born with value, right? Because there's many lenses at which we can look at something and to say that has value, right? So if I give you, you know, like a Ferrari Testarossa, where you're living right now, well, I say like where I'm living, right? I'm in New York. Like it'd be like really cool, like wow, cool, classic Ferrari Testarossa, fantastic, okay. But if I'm living in the fucking Sahara Desert and someone said, here's a Ferrari Testarossa, I'm gonna be like, great, what the fuck am I gonna do with that? It's completely useless in the desert. You know, it's like a $300,000 paperweight. Fantastic. You know, I'd much rather have a camel. You know, but give me a camel in New York City that's gonna do me fuck all, right? I'd rather have like a lifetime supply of like subway passes. That'd be much better than a fucking camel. So you know, value really depends upon like what lens you're looking at it with. And if you're looking at the women with the lens of beauty, sexuality, valuing sex, valuing pussy, right? And I'm not saying these things are completely valueless, but by starting off automatically valuing them without any sort of you know, assessment, then you've already lost. You've already lost. You say, wow, she's pretty, right? It's like, well, how do you know she's pretty? Right? Because beauty comes about from something internal, like where she is. That really is beautiful. Like when I can see where she is, oh man, that's the shit right there, you know. But to look at a girl who just happened to win the genetic lottery, or who's good at putting on makeup, right, or who's had surgery, or, you know, works out a lot or whatever, you know, to be like, oh, she's pretty, that doesn't make any sense. Not to me anyways. It doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. Like for her to become aligned with me, that's pretty. Like that's far more attractive, far more beautiful than some girl who just happened to win the genetic lottery. She didn't do fuck all for that, you know? I want to see it created. I want to see it earned. I want things to go from nothing into something. That's pretty to me. But you know, guys, and you just easily entranced. Like, oh man, look at that. And even like on chicks that aren't even that attractive, it's weird. I was walking down the street the other day, and I was on the sidewalk, and there were two guys kind of just standing there, like posted up, just hanging out, talking. And I'm walking past them, and this woman comes like walking by me on my left, like faster than I am, and she's like trotting off. And I like took a glance, and like she was mid, like at best. And these guys were like, "Oh man, look at how beautiful she was. Oh my gosh." And I'm just like, how? Like, how are you determining this? You know, just by looking at her? It just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. Oh yeah, completely predictable. Yes, humble this bitch. Subs, look smashed. Yeah, like all that stuff. Yeah, like young guys are fucking doomed. I'm telling you, doomed. Absolutely doomed. And they're gonna continue just being doomed until they're like, oh shit, like I play the biggest role in this. You know, James Brown was not lying when he said it's a man's world. And few people understand that. You know, men and women, feminists don't understand that. Like, it doesn't matter, like, because it only doesn't seem that way when guys are worshiping pussy, when they pedestalize just even the symbol of women. You know, and that's not to say that women belong in the gutter. You know, I'm not saying that at all. But just on the ground as an organism that's here. Like, it's not that big of a deal. You know, they're just girls. But, you know, when you really come to terms with what James was saying, I can't really see it any other way. You know, that this is a man's world. And you can look at it superficially. You know, you can look at it spiritually. You know, you can look at it philosophically. You can look at it sexually. There's many metrics, many lenses by which you can look at this, and it really is this way. I think in any lens, the only lens is when you're looking at it from the perspective of like a simp, you know, incels, red pill guys, angry dudes, pussy obsessed dudes, you know, all that. Like, from that perspective, yeah, women run the world because women run their world. So it's like, whatever, you know, whatever you hate, you worship. Whatever you worship, you worship. And that's what you see as, like, you know, what are the control mechanisms in your reality. And so all these guys, you know, they have that red pill hate, frustration, the angst. They still worship. You know, that's a form of worship, is hate. That's why the most victorious position to be in is neutral, right? To be like the stick of burning incense. You know, the way the Buddha was explaining, right? Be the middle way. Don't be on fire. Don't be extinguished. Just smolder in the middle. And it frees you from so much. It frees you absolutely from so many parameters, you know, including judgment and hate, but even attaching to things that seem joyful or whatever, you know, it all passes through. And you know, I really feel that that's one of the best ways to remain on your square, is to be in a position where things just pass through, right? What was that thing? Yeah, so like if you're familiar with Frank Herbert, right, the author, he he wrote Dune. Um, I think like the first two Dune books, and then like afterwards, his son wrote the rest. Um, but honestly, I think like just the first one is the one that I like the most, which is just Dune. Um, I suggest reading it. It's much better than the films. It's very, very political. Um, and be warned, they don't have those like sound weapons in the book. That's something that was added um, by the who did it? Who did Dune one? I forget. You know who it was. No, not the new one, but 1984. David Lynch, right? So David Lynch added those like sound weapons, you know. But anyways, so Frank he came up with this thing called like the litany against fear, and it goes like this: I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear, and this is the important part that I was thinking about. I will permit it to pass over me and through me, and when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And in my head, I was replacing fear with things like hate, joy, and things like that, because really it's about attachment, right? I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And so when this happens with certain emotional states, this is what allows you to stay grounded on your square. You're not resisting whatever's trying to push you against your square. It just passes through. Like it doesn't grab onto anything and pull you this way or that. And this is, like I was saying, like this is the most advantageous place to be psychologically, emotionally, and also from your position of leadership. Okay, because like the examples of those two guys, right, two of my students, by them being in that neutral, relaxed position, they were not thrown off by the strong emotional state of one or the testing of the other, of the women involved. Not thrown off at all. It just passed through and then deal with it. And this is the great thing. The other benefit, the other edge of that blade, okay, because leadership is a dual-edged sword, okay? It's not like a katana, more like a broadsword that has an edge on both sides. It's you then can use the same things to teach her. You teach her to let things pass through and over her. It's a little bit harder, and it has to come through a different method, right? Because we can hear that and mentally resonate with it, come at it from like a place of reasoning and go, that makes a lot of sense. That sounds cool. I get it. And I can like activate that within myself through my reasoning. You have to learn to take the same essence of the lesson and produce a different vehicle for your submissive, for your woman, and teach the same thing, get the same result, but through the emotional pathway, so they can understand how to remain in a similar state as you remaining on your square. And then they're becoming more centered, right? Because like in that, the litany of fear, in order to do this well, the not fearing, fear being the mind killer, fear is a little death that brings total obliteration. I'll face my fear, permit it to pass over me and through me. Like all of that has very much to do with the importance and unimportance of the ego, right? Because if you've got like a very important ego, like that's very strong with you, that has a lot of attachments and tethers and all that stuff, it's going to be very difficult to let things pass over you and through you. You see how that works? And it prevents you from getting to like higher levels of yourself, deeper levels of yourself. And if you can't do that, then you can't lead her to do the same thing. Right? It's a man's world. You are creating the reality for yourself to experience, to then for her to experience, you know? But when it happens, you know, this is you know, like great shifts, you know. So it's been what, yeah, about 9. So I've asked my submissive to reflect on just that. I'm giving her like some time to kind of think about it and get back to me about like a shift that she's noticed from when we had first met and where she was, how she felt about herself, about our interactions up to now, and what she thinks shifted most within her. And I think this is important to do, is to, because what that does is it gets one to kind of like step back and look at oneself and say, well, how am I? Right? Instead of just being in it all the time, like living of it. And that's fine, because this is like pretty much how we all are for most of the time. But I think it's important every now and then to kind of back off, you know, much in the same way that a painter, you know, they're in there painting and getting all detailed shit, and then they'll step back, right? And they'll, you know, drink their coffee or smoke their cigarette or something like that, and just like stand there from a few feet away and observe the whole painting, and you know, just kind of like just take a wide view. And I think that's important to do. It's important to lead her to that, right? After some time has passed, and say, okay, step back. How have you been compared to how you are now? And so that prompts the mind to say, well, how am I now? Because I'm usually just in my now. I'm usually in myself now. So let me take a second and like reflect, take a few steps back and go, okay, like, how am I? And what has changed? What's been the biggest shift within my experience of myself? And so that's why it's important to have guides in our lives, right? I have mentors of my own, and you know, I mentor my submissive in a number of ways, and I think it's just it's an integral part of development, you know? So I'll leave you guys with this, that I think it's very important to look at your interactions with women from the position of wanting to be a teacher, wanting to be a guide, a mentor, like whatever sort of like label you want to put on it. Or we could just go labelless and just, what's the feeling, what's the essence behind all of those labels? So disregard the names, but what's the essence and the feeling behind those concepts, those words? Come at relationships, come at your interactions with women from that place, not from the lower place, right? The lower vibration, lower chakra, lower energy, whatever you want to fucking call it, or it's just sex and survival, right? Because what are you going to teach her from there? And he said, well, fuck, why do I care about teaching her anything? Well, are you just good for nothing then? Are you good for just dick? Like what are, you're a man. You're part of your like modus operandi is to create. This is a man's world. We created this whole fucking thing. You know, if you're biblical, you know, Adam, he was like, this is my shit. You know, I'm naming all of these things. I'm taking dominion over all of this stuff. It's an extension of me, you know? And so what, you're just here to fucking dip your dick in holes? Like, come on. You're a waste of fucking space. You're a waste of an opportunity to influence, you know, to create. And so I think that you need to kind of get out of that lower chakra, that lower position, that lower area of just like, oh, I just want to fuck, right? Sense pleasure, and come into the realm of something a little bit higher up. Not going fucking through the roof and getting all fucking celestial and shit like that. I'm not saying that, but come a little higher up. And from this place where, again, the essence behind the words of mentor, teacher, guide, that sort of shit. Because that will put your head in a different space, and therefore it will put your behaviors in a different space. And what do you think? Is she gonna maybe more likely to trust you if you are in that space authentically, with conviction, like calm conviction? She's more likely to trust, which means she's more likely to open, which is more likely to be vulnerable, which means she's more likely to submit, more likely to surrender, which means all the fucking sex shit that you wanted when you were fucking operating on that lower vibration, that comes automatically. Like, and probably way stronger, way more fun than it would be if it was otherwise. So consider that angle moving forward. All right. Thank you for joining me here tonight. I've appreciated your company and your ear. Much thanks. Have yourself a good week ahead, okay? Be on top of your shit. Don't slack, like death is tomorrow. Don't slack. The only reason why you slack is because you think death is not coming tomorrow, and it probably isn't, but that's what allows you to be comfortable. All right, but consider this. All right, thanks again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy.